So I'm super excited to host Timothy Betts from TCU, my colleague on the third floor from the Department of Communication Studies. And today we're going to talk about Reddit. Timothy, what is Reddit? Most of my students are on Instagram, they're on TikTok, some are on Facebook or Twitter, if they're old school, but not many are on Reddit. What is Reddit?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about Reddit. Reddit, if you've ever heard of Reddit, you probably know it as the front page of the internet. It's a social networking site that's a little bit different from most of the other platforms that you mentioned, where it's kind of like it's not a platform where you curate a profile for yourself. It's not really about people, where if you think about Twitter, you've got a profile, you've got a timeline of all these tweets that you've collected. Facebook is about, connecting with other people. Reddit is really centered around the topics that you want to talk about. It's not about people. And that's kind of what the front page of the internet is supposed to be. It's this idea that you share links, you share stories, you share ideas or photos, some kind of content that's probably not created specifically for Reddit, and then you talk about it. That's really what Reddit is. It's a place to come together, find interesting stories, ideas, thoughts, and then have a conversation. I think that's how I think about Reddit.
So let's get metaphorical over here. I always tell people that Twitter is kind of like opening up the window and shouting at strangers on the street, or Facebook, right, is actually shouting at the people in your apartment. What would be the perfect metaphor for Reddit?
I think a metaphor for Reddit. Okay, so if it's not shouting at a window, I think it's like shouting at a convention. It's like coming to a convention of people who are really nerdy about a certain topic. It's and each different post feels like a different seminar or a different event or a different panel at a convention for me, where the people who are there, all attending the convention, are interested in the same kind of topic, but then they branch out and have conversations in rooms. And there's a lot of spontaneous interaction with people you may not have met before. And it's not as centered around building relationships with people as it is discussing the ideas that you find interesting. The reason you see people at Comic-Con is not because centrally they want to meet people. I mean, that happens as well, but centrally they like talking about, Doctor Who or Star Wars or something that they're really interested in. I think Reddit operates the same way, because you have these things called subreddits that are communities that are self-regulating. They're built upon interests that individuals share. And that's kind of the main building block of Reddit. So I think of it like a convention.
Okay. And so Reddit in a way is sort of like a hashtag in some degree, right?
Yeah, there's certainly a relationship between kind of that topic centering, definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about the community aspect of it. If I'm a marketer, if I'm a brand, is Reddit a good place for me to kind of engage the conversation around my industry or my topic?
I would definitely think so. One of the interesting things about Reddit is I think that there's really two different kinds of people that probably center or post on a Reddit forum. Either it's people who are longstanding members of a community. These are people who would be highly engaged in your product. I think, for example, of like Sony headphones, where I have specifically used Reddit there for for a variety of reasons. I have Sony headphones, and there's a lot of people on there who post often, are following Sony, have followed the product for years, have followed their headphones of different varieties, all sorts of things, right? Or you have people like me who come in and say, hey, I've got a problem with my Sony headphones. You all are experts on this. Can you help me out? And so one of the nice things about that for a brand is that you have this community of highly engaged people who are really invested in the product that you're selling, that are really invested in really invested beyond the actual product itself. They become identified with the product, I think, to a certain extent. And so for a person who's trying to manage a brand image or get information about, how a community is responding to certain things, these are people who are not they're not afraid of sharing, both their praise and their disappointment with products. So I think that there's a lot of value to be had there for someone who's trying to, think about a brand.
Absolutely. So these brand communities exist all around Reddit. I mean, Reddit really is the next evolution of old school discussion boards, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if brands can identify their brand community and engage in active listening, I mean, wow, what an amazing way to gather relevant research.
Definitely.
Let's talk about influencers on Reddit. I mean,
Mhm.
doesn't matter what the platform is. Some people lead the conversation, and some people are some thought leaders, right?
I think there's probably a different relationship to how people influence on Reddit than are probably typical for other social media platforms. To be honest, I don't know of what that kind of relationship is between influencers and and these communities. There are certain people on communities called mods. They're moderators who influence the conversation by establishing rules, making sure that people are being civil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, following the community guidelines. But one of the interesting things about the platform is that all of the profiles are pseudonymous. There's not a lot of personal information that's contained on them. There's not a lot of link to a specific profile where people aren't really talking and communicating with individuals. It's more about that topic. So influence in that sense, I think, would operate a little bit differently. I think that's an interesting way to go for research too, because I don't think there's been work that examines how influence, kind of operates on Reddit. Now,
Well,
there's obviously,
let's
oh, go
let's
ahead.
talk about the power of Reddit. I mean,
Yeah.
Reddit came into the popular lingo with the Reddit revolution of 2021 or 2020, right? Wall
Mhm.
Street Bets, a subreddit group, right? Can you talk about Wall Street Bets, what happened, and what are some key lessons about social media that can be learned from that case study?
Yeah, of course. I've personally done a lot of work on Wall Street Bets because I find the case fascinating. And especially in terms of what we were talking about just a second ago with, influence and how individuals operate on, I think that, that kind of gives an interesting case study because a lot of the influence came from certain people on Reddit, but it came from people sharing links outside of Reddit. So one of the main influencers who is, kind of guiding this Wall Street Bets revolution, as you talk about the Reddit revolution. I mean, it came from a person who was mainly posting on YouTube, and those YouTube links were shared on Reddit. But in terms of like the practical implications of Reddit, there's a variety of different communities that I think have kind of shaped this. Most prominent being Wall Street Bets, where a group of individuals, because of their interest in Wall Street and trying to find profitable trades and this exaggerated, almost memeified quality of trading, right? I mean, if you're unfamiliar with the Reddit revolution, it was people buying GameStop and AMC stock, not stocks that are really high valued at that time, and they just shot them through the roof. Another one more recently is the Dogecoin, the meme cryptocurrency that became, it became a talisman of these kinds of this interest in trying to produce both individual wealth for people's own uses. People wanted to be like the new millionaires, and they wanted to make money off of it. And there were certainly implications for that. There was a lot of individual wealth that was created in the Reddit revolution with AMC and GameStop, but there was also this level of wanting to stick it to the man. It was interesting when I did work on Wall Street Bets, looking at how people were discussing the concept of kind of like trying to hold the stock, because there was a lot of resistance from mainstream news media, from financial news and all of that, for people to just sell the stock, because once it got to a certain point, the CNBC was saying, oh my God, you need to sell this stock, otherwise you're going to lose your hat on this, right? But they were advocating that they didn't want to sell the stock, not because they thought they weren't going to lose money. They knew they were going to lose money. It was about sticking it to a specific hedge fund, Melvin Capital, who they thought, we don't like you. We think you're doing bad things and we want to punish you. And they did. They lost billions of dollars. So, I mean, it's this space where even though it's, not centered around people, it's centered around topics, you still have this massive potential for people to come together and do some really weird but powerful things.
Absolutely, right? So we saw Twitter being utilized for a lot of social movements, right?
Mhm.
Such as Black Lives Matters or the Me Too movement. Uh,
Yeah.
Reddit is mostly known for Wall Street Bets so far. Are there any other very famous case studies?
Well, there are a couple, but they're a little bit less positive, which I think is another interesting aspect of Reddit. You know, when you've got a community that comes together over things they're interested in, sometimes that's not a positive example. Some of the most prominent examples before Wall Street bets became really common lingo. There was the Red Pill, which is a community of involuntary celibates, incels, who were advocating these really damaging anti-feminist, like harmfully, violently anti-women ideas on Reddit. And they eventually, the reason you probably don't hear about them as much is they got quarantined, which is a Reddit procedure where the company itself is like, nope, you need to go away. And they quarantine the site and then eventually can remove a community. And there's Sean Eddington has done a lot of work on that particular community and examining how they have used Reddit as a platform to network and kind of how it breeds these particular ideas. And so that's a more negative example. But there's a lot of other less prominent examples of how people have, used Reddit in order to do certain things. I mean, there's chronic pain communities on Reddit where people who are experiencing symptoms that are, completely dismissed by their doctors can go and say, hey, are you experiencing this too? What have you found? Are there doctors that are listening to you? There's communities of trans people who are working to get access to medical care, find surgeons who are good at doing the gender affirming care that trans people need. I mean, there's so many different communities that have practical impacts that may be a little bit less prominent than the impact that Wall Street bets had, which was really splashy. It was a huge spectacle. But there's a lot of practical advocacy that happens in these forums and on platforms that kind of transcends that spectacle, I think.
Absolutely. Well, there's no doubt that Reddit is a really awesome platform, and especially a place where people can come together and gather around an idea or a brand. These online communities are really understudied, and I think there's so much research and professional interest to be taken in them. So thank you so much for stopping by today. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more in the future about Reddit and other social media platforms. Go
Yeah, of
Frog.
course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.